it's made headlines because she does, and of course in the woke media. Siouxsie Wiles, Susie, named after a band called Susie and the Banshees, were quite big in the day. Siouxsie Wiles is a chemist, basically. She's a molecular biologist, I think, and works in a lab with a white coat. So she's a doctor or a professor. But during the time of COVID, Siouxsie Wiles was clearly mates with a guy called Sean Hendy, professor, who was mates with Jacinda Ardern, and she became part of a kind of cabal. The government had a strategy, and the strategy was that it shouldn't just be the government and it was a communication strategy that we've seen the papers on. The idea was that the government would get a bunch of experts, so-called independent experts, to push the government message because the public would be less resistant to people who weren't directly associated with the government. And very quickly, and because I guess she was fat and had pink hair and was different, and that was all about diversity, Siouxsie Wiles became very, very famous in New Zealand. She was at the time she was working for Auckland University, but she became very famous, and those who weren't enamoured of the quite draconian COVID strategies we had, and she was a real pusher of social media, trolled her. I think it'd be fair to say they trolled her, and she was criticised because she was in the public eye, essentially being a proxy politician, a proxy for the government, and she got criticised, some of it quite nasty. Though I don't think any physical, not like Posey Parker, I don't think anyone physically harmed her or anything. She is now taking Auckland University to court, to the Employment Tribunal, arguing that as her employer, Auckland University failed in its duty to ensure her safety because of the opprobrium and the pile-on she was getting for her work with COVID. Sean Hendy was also going to take a similar case. He worked for the university at the same time. He's left Auckland University and he settled out of court. So what is at stake here? What's the basis of this case, and why are so many employment lawyers I'm talking to interested in it? Well, to find out, we're joined now by Andrew Shaw. He's a partner and employment law specialist at Lane Neve. Andrew, lovely to have you with us. Interesting case, isn't it?
Oh, it's a very interesting case, and I'm just reading in the media how it's progressing. I think we're a couple of days into 3 weeks. So, yeah, very fascinating. A real balance, I think, in terms of Auckland University's obligations here.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing to me, Andrew, and I presume we're not breaking any laws given it's the Employment Tribunal and discussing the case while it's ongoing. Neither of us are parties to it.
No, absolutely not. It's the employment court, and we're just making comments arising out of media commentary. All
right. One of the things is that the work that attracted the criticism for Siouxsie Wiles was outside her normal duties to the university. And I looked at the case and I thought, as a layperson at first blush, I know she was engaged by the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet and various agencies of state set up to communicate around COVID. So surely in this instance, they were the relevant employers rather than the university.
Yeah, you would think so, but her primary employer was the university, and so under the Health and Safety at Work Act and the Employment Relations Act, that's the party you go to initially. And for me, the university had obligations to her as a worker while she was at work. The grey area, though, was this part of her work and what she was doing? And I think from what I can see from the argument, she's claiming it is. What the university is saying is that, well, there's a real balance here between academic freedom against the other duties of the university to provide for her safety. Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see how the employment court...
And the other thing the university said, Andrew, was if you don't like the heat, get out of the kitchen, shut the F up, basically.
Yeah, look, that's well and good, but if the university is held to have duties either as a PCBU, a person conducting a business or undertaking, or as an employer, you've got to go further than that. if they're held to not have the duties because this was outside of her work, then that's probably sufficient.
Yeah, well, the problem I would see, Andrew, and I guess recently in the last few years having actually employed people, I can't take responsibility for the consequences of actions that my staff take outside their duties for me that might impact on their personal safety. That can't possibly be my responsibility.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. What you do in your own personal life can't be the employer's concern, unless, of course, it relates back to employment. So, for example, if you're doing something outside of work and then somebody comes to the workplace to have a crack at you, as apparently has occurred, the employer must take duties there. But if they're having a crack at you outside of work because of what you're doing in your personal life, I would suggest that the employer doesn't have the influence or ability to do much.
Yeah. Apparently, it was a very badly written headline. It says, there was a headline a couple of days ago, it said, Siouxsie Wiles leaves employment court in tears, and it wasn't clear whether she'd made them cry or she'd left in tears, talking about the harassment she'd received. We also live in a time, though, Andrew, where there's this thing called cry-bullying, and even, like, thinking differently can be offensive to some people, and they say that's an assault upon their safety. I also think the court's got to decide where it draws the line on what is harassment or harmful behaviour and what's just the argy-bargy of being involved in a contentious public issue.
Yeah, I mean, if you put yourself out there, then you're often going to find that there will be differing views. What Susie did for the country should be commended in terms of her.
Well, hang on, I don't know, Andrew. Are you an expert on COVID response and social distancing?
No, but what I do say is that as a member of the public, I needed information, and if she's an expert providing the information, then I'm happy to listen to that.
Well, the government appointed her as the expert because the government didn't think it would believe you would believe them. So she was handpicked as a proxy for the government.
Yeah, I mean, look, the government's motivations here is something that need to be questioned. But look, if I've got an academic person who has expertise. Look, you judge for your own self whether it's right or wrong, but at least you have the information to do that.